Prime Minister Boris Johnson appears to be caving into Labour's pressure to ban ministers from working as paid advisers, setting out a plan to do just that ahead of a Commons debate on the issue later today.
Yes, it follows weeks of political pressure amid a row over former Tory MP Owen Paterson, who broke ministerial lobbying rules. The Prime Minister said his ban would stop MPs from exploiting their positions.
Well, now let's speak to Henry Hill, news editor at ConservativeHome, which supports but is independent of the Conservative Party, and Sam Ashworth-Hayes, Director of Studies at the Henry Jackson Society, a foreign policy and national security think tank. Thank you very much. Well, we'll start with you, Sam, I think, on this particular issue. Is Boris Johnson just caving in?
He's certainly responding to a degree of public and political pressure, but I think, the idea that MPs perhaps should not hold certain jobs as consultants is not in itself an absolutely appalling one. But we do want to be careful that we don't make the job an even worse one for candidates to take, which again is why this sort of thing should be accompanied with a significant pay increase.
And Henry, what do you make of what's happening at the moment? Because it does seem that the Labour Party has taken obviously a much stauncher position in terms of second jobs. I think Keir Starmer saying that the norm should be MPs shouldn't have second jobs, and there'll be a few exceptions, but the Conservatives seem to be taking a more lenient approach.
Yeah, I think the first thing to note is it's obviously much easier for Labour to be anti-second jobs because they're out of power and, have been out of power for quite a long time. So there's just less demand for Labour MPs to be doing other things. So this is a really easy hit for the opposition to land. But yeah, I also think that it does reflect to an extent different conceptions of how the role of an MP should be. For a lot of Conservative MPs, if you set aside lobbying, and I think lobbying is a separate question, there should be restrictions on that. It's just much more normal for Conservative MPs to either still have links to old businesses or perhaps be in the professions and want to maintain their accreditation. Whereas, given the way that Labour often regulate things, it makes more sense that they want being an MP to be a full-time job. So this is the problem for Boris Johnson. Lots of his MPs know that they're not going to end up in government, and they earn quite a lot of money doing other things. And if he tries to crack down on this, then his already quite mutinous backbenchers are going to get even more difficult to control.
So it's all very well and good saying that maybe MPs should get a bit of a pay rise if they're not allowed to do their second jobs, but surely being an MP is a calling. It's more of a vocation than anything. There are loads of jobs out there where people do it for the love of it and for the service of it, not to line their own pockets. And if they need a pay rise in order to do it, surely they're the wrong people for the job.
No, I disagree very strongly, actually. These are people who are often very well qualified, and we want very well qualified people in these positions to make the laws which govern this country. The idea that you should be doing it purely for the love of it is a system which would end up selecting for either the very wealthy or those who are so strongly politically motivated that perhaps they wouldn't be particularly reasonable in governance. So clearly, we should be paying it commensurate with the importance it holds, which means it should be a very well-paid role. What we don't want to do is get ourselves in a position where we make the role very unattractive to highly talented people who have good outside options, and basically fill it with sort of quite mediocre people who would be willing to put up with the conditions in exchange for a pay rise in their current work.
And Henry, what do you make of that in terms of paying MPs more so they don't feel the need to actually go out and get second jobs?
Well, I think that if you do, I agree with Sam. I mean, I personally do defend, even in principle, the idea of MPs having second jobs, provided there are proper rules in place to prevent conflict and lobbying, which we did sort of already have before Boris Johnson decided to try and overrule them. But no, I agree with Sam. The fact of the matter is, yes, in £80,000 or however much they earn is a lot of money on paper, but it's not a lot of money compared to what the peers of a lot of these people will be earning in law, in commercial banking, and in some of the other professions. And on top of that, being an MP is often a very miserable job. It destroys marriages. You end up having to sit late. I mean, only one day a week. If you live somewhere else in another part of the country, you're stuck in London. You're subject to all of this often quite vituperative public scrutiny. This drives out good people. So yeah, if you want to restrict secondary earnings and you want to make sure that we end up with some good people in politics, you will have to pay them a lot more money. It's what other countries do. And if we're not prepared to do the same, then the quality of the House of Commons will only continue to decline.
OK, well, I mean, I suppose, an argument that is an individual like Nigel Farage, who left a very, very, very wealthy industry, as it were, to go into politics. And I'm sure that there's a lot of friends of Nigel who have, retired with several tens of millions in the bank or whatever, and Nigel's actually got the passion for politics, hasn't he? Whether or not people agree or disagree with his political views, he's made that particular move for himself. And, there are people out there like that. It shouldn't all be about what your mates in the city are earning. But is there an argument to maybe reduce the size of an MP's constituency, so maybe keep their pay the same, reduce, Sam, I'll go to you with this one, reduce the size of their constituency, and then maybe actually, they have a little bit of a lesser MP's job to do, as it were, and they can do some more stuff on the side?
I don't think more MPs is a solution we want here. And I don't think Nigel Farage, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think he's ever been an MP. He was an MEP, which is a slightly different role, with obviously a different pay packet. I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, he was going into the political industry. That was the point I was making. If he'd have been an MP, he would have done it for the love of it, not because of the money. That's what I mean.
Right. No, I think the idea of having more MPs with a small constituency, yes, for some MPs, a major part of their role is casework, and this tends to be more the case with Labour MPs and Conservative MPs who tend to work in, slightly nicer constituencies with slightly fewer social problems. But it's not a strictly linear function between the size of your constituency and the amount of work you have to do. And obviously, as Henry points out, they spend a lot of time in Parliament sitting and, legislating, and that's fundamentally going to be a really large part of their role and going to be a very, frankly, the more hours they can put into that than into casework, the better we are as a country. So I'm not sure that would be a fix, no.
And Henry, let's just finish with sort of trying to see where this might actually end up, how this will end up. You're obviously in tune with the goings-on in the Conservative Party. Do you think MPs will back Boris Johnson in whatever he's attempting to do? Or what's your feeling about how the backbenchers in the party are feeling on this issue?
My hunch is that they will almost certainly get Boris to water the proposal down. I think that the problem is that, one, as I said earlier, a lot of these people recognise that there's, if they're in the 2010 intake, for example, that they're probably not going to get a ministerial career, and they voted loyally with the whip, and the idea that they're now going to be put out of pocket by tens of thousands of pounds is obviously very upsetting. But I think it's also the fact that Boris Johnson, of all people, simply does not have the moral authority to lecture MPs on this question. He keeps doing outside earnings. He keeps doing books and all sorts of things, and therefore a lot of normal backbench MPs are like, hold on a minute. If it's all right for the Prime Minister to keep doing this, then why on earth is he going to stop me doing it because he screwed up? So no, I think the fact he has 3 years to go theoretically until the next general election. If he wants to get anything through and retain any kind of control over the Parliamentary Conservative Party, he's going to have to find some kind of solution which deals with the most egregious abuses, deals with actual lobbying, but allows Conservative MPs to keep going out and making money on the side, because that's what they already do.